Steve Sokol from Digium, and I'd like to welcome everybody to the Friday the 13th VoIP Security Webinar, a special webinar brought to you by Digium to cover the concerns regarding VoIP security in Asterisk and Switchvox. And today we've got presenting with us 4 extra special guests. We have Special Agent Michael McAndrews from the FBI, who will lead off. We have Dan York, who is he's the chairman of the Best Practices Committee for the VoIP Security Alliance, and also, I believe, a leader within the Voxeo Corporation. We have Jared Smith from Digium, who's our training manager, and we'll be talking about securing Asterisk and the specifics and mechanics of that. And we've got Tristan Degenhardt, who is the product marketing director for Switchvox, who will talk about Switchvox and how one goes about setting the security options for it. So I appreciate everybody joining us this morning. We're going to give a couple of more minutes. So far we've got 134 people in the webinar, and we're expecting somewhere close to 450. So we'll give probably 2 more minutes, and then I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Special Agent McAndrews. While we're doing this little bit of waiting, I'll give you some housekeeping tips. We've got the ability to raise a hand within the system, and if you're dialed in, you'll actually be able to ask a question by voice once I give you the sort of presenter baton. Easier still is to ask questions via text. The GoToWebinar system has a text chat option, and you can go in and either send chat messages, or you can actually ask questions through that, and they'll show up in the question list, and our presenters can join and sort of answer your questions. I see that a couple of you guys have already actually put some in there, so we will be going through and trying to answer those as we go. The presentations are expected to take right about an hour, and we'll have a little bit of question and answer from both Special Agent McAndrews and Mr. York. Then we'll go through the 2 specific presentations from Jared and Tristan, and we'll have kind of an open discussion thereafter for as long as people want to hang out. So that's kind of the way things go. I think since we're under kind of a tight schedule, I'm going to go ahead and get stuff started. Without any further ado, I'm going to go ahead and Michael, if you are ready, I will go ahead and turn it over to you.
Very good.
Excellent. 1 second here, and let me get this running. And just to make sure, Tristan, if we're recording?
Yes, we're recording.
Awesome.
Okay, is that showing up for everyone yet, Steve?
It is for me.
Okay.
If I could have somebody text me or something if you're having problems, please do. But otherwise, we're going to let Agent McAndrews roll.
Excellent. Well, Steve, thank you very much. As Steve said, my name is Michael McAndrews, and I'm an agent with the FBI. I'm currently based in the Oklahoma City Division. I am assigned to our cyber squad, and our cyber squad handles pretty much any crime involving a computer. We tend to focus primarily on crimes that center on Internet technologies. That obviously is an emerging threat that we've seen grow over the past several years. And so today specifically I wanted to speak for a few moments about the emerging trends that we've seen from our perspective regarding voice over IP and voice over IP fraud. My phone number is indicated here for the office, and my email address is indicated also. I want to make clear I'm not a voice over IP expert. I trust the panelists today are going to inform you fully on how to secure your systems, and with luck we're going to help teach you a little bit of way to stop. Do not allow yourself to become a victim to any of the scams that I'm going to speak of in this presentation. However, anything I can do to assist anyone or anything needs to be reported to the FBI, feel free to use my phone number and email as you see fit. So, starting off, let me talk for just a few minutes here a little bit about the FBI and the cyber program. The FBI cyber program is actually broken into several priorities. Our priorities are based on what the director and the president and staff have worked together to determine the FBI needs to focus on. The top of those priorities at this time are computer intrusions. Specifically, we focus on national security intrusions first and foremost, followed then by criminal intrusions. We feel this is a grave threat to national security, also intellectual property and other such things. The folks that would conduct such intrusions are a grave threat to us, and that needs to be investigated. Voice over IP fraud specifically sometimes falls into this category, depending on what the malicious attackers are doing when they get a hold of a system. Sometimes the case can be classified as an intrusion, which gives it obviously a little bit higher priority. We also focused a lot of our efforts on innocent images. Innocent images would be referred by most people as a child pornography initiative. We're very concerned about crimes against children, specifically those targeting over the internet, and those who would produce, distribute, or possess images of child pornography and trade them over the internet, or those who would travel in interstate commerce to hurt children are obviously a big priority for the FBI. Intellectual property rights is a growing concern. Sometimes this will, as you see, touch the voice over IP arena. If somebody gets into your system and your particular data is exposed, be it through capturing of packets and voice over IP phone calls, or simply through using the voice over IP server as a hot point to get into the rest of your network, your intellectual property and your company's property are a big concern. So sometimes voice over IP investigations can run into those realms. And then finally, we have internet fraud. And I believe a lot of the attendees are probably very familiar with Craigslist, phishing scams that we're going to talk a little bit more about, emails, and the like. Those, albeit the lower priority on our scale, are also given a lot of attention and by no means are disregarded. Oftentimes the crimes that we investigate cross all of these priorities. So it gives you an idea of where we're going. Now, voice over IP, as the folks from Digium and the rest of the panelists will tell you, obviously I don't believe we have to sell this to anyone. It's a great product. We've talked to many of the victims that we've worked with, and we asked them, hey, just so we know why are you exploring voice over IP technology? And the advantages come back consistently across the board as a cost factor, low-cost calling plans. Remote workers, oftentimes very mobile, need to be able to remote into the systems. It gives a common appearance quite often that if somebody's making outbound calls, they're coming from the home office. Unified messaging, converting voicemails to text and the like, along with call forwarding logic, all very easily configurable. So the bottom line consistently when we've talked to victims as to why they've chosen to implement voice over IP technology has always been cost, control, and flexibility. This is no longer where you have to go out and employ a large telecom to come in and put a giant box in the corner of your office somewhere to do a PBX. Now, based on software with some expertise, they can implement very easily a good solution that provides the cost control and flexibility that people are looking for. So, however, we've also recognized that when people implement the technology, there's always risk involved. And without exception, almost without exception, I should say, across the board, the number one risk that we found has been maintenance. This product, voice over IP, primarily is a software product. Primarily, they run on a computer system in somebody's office, and they are treated much the same as people would a computer. However, they are not always given the resources like you would a web server or a database server of some sort where somebody's actually managing it. So when we've gone into places and found that there's been an intrusion, very commonly we've found that the resources were not dedicated to actually update the software, to maintain security on the box, to patch the underlying operating system, and to give that resource the attention that it really deserves, much the same that they're feeding their web presence or anything else, which they feel sometimes is a greater presence because people log into the website every day and they just do not realize the exposure that they have in a voice over IP system. One particular case that I've worked in the past few months, the voice over IP server that was found to have been compromised was managed by a contractor. However, that particular contractor had not been employed with that company for almost a year. Therefore, the server had been sitting without any attention for at least 12 months before we realized it had been compromised. The way we realized it had been compromised in that particular case falls into the second bullet point here, which is public image. The intruders attacked the voice over IP server and began making some phone calls utilizing a scam that I'm going to discuss later on, but they did not alter the caller ID function. Therefore, when the scam calls were going out, it was the actual victim company's name and phone number that was showing up on the caller ID to the other potential victims out there. So very quickly, complaints began coming into the FBI as well as other financial institutions saying, hey, somebody's calling from this company at this phone number trying to get my information. So public image becomes a big factor when, unlike your web page where people visit it daily and see it on the web, the caller ID feature starts to show up. People tend to associate that directly to your company, and the next thing you know, they're reporting you to blog sites, to law enforcement, and to Better Business Bureau if necessary, saying this particular company is actually trying to perpetrate a fraud when in fact that company is indeed a victim. And then finally, because it is a newer technology, and the technology is still so new and not given the resources, it's a very tempting target for a lot of attackers. We're going to talk in a few minutes about some tools that are specifically crafted to target voice over IP systems out there, and they're having great success with it. So fortunately, through security webinars such as this, we're hoping that we can inform people that manage these systems and help prevent more victims in the future. So as we start talking about the scams, I want to make sure everybody's level set on one particular thing, and that is phishing. The anti-phishing work group actually defines phishing as a criminal mechanism employing social engineering and technical subterfuge to steal consumers' personal identity and financial records. In essence, somebody is using technology to scam you, to lie to you, to socially engineer you. Similar to a phone call asking for information, they're simply using some means of technology to do so. And almost without exception, in the criminal world, the target of these criminals is obviously your bank account. They want to get to your money. That's the point. They want to make money. And that's strictly a good old-fashioned crime. It's just a matter of using technology to do it. Sometimes, however, they may also be using the technical means to gain credentials to your network for more malicious means such as the intellectual property theft that I discussed, or potentially eavesdropping for not only intellectual property, but corporate espionage as well. We have found cases where the voice over IP server is simply an entry into the network, and once the people get into the network, then obviously they will try to exploit anything they can. All right. The first known cases for phishing appeared on our radar back in 2006. Since that time, I believe pretty much everyone has probably at this webinar received an email of some sort. It's not uncommon at all for a gentleman in Nigeria to inform you that you have a relative that has passed away. And with that relative, you can obviously, by providing your bank account information, help move your inheritance from Nigeria to the United States. I think most people are very familiar with this kind of scam. We've also seen when they originated a lot of websites, malicious URLs. Sometimes you'll find software programs embedded through scripts that are meant to get onto your computer and act as a Trojan to steal your information. Again, criminals are targeting your bank account information. They want to make money. They want to do what they can to line their pockets with your money and make you a victim. This increase, as you'll see by the graphic here, it drastically increased in December, beginning in 2008. The number of malicious code URLs out there is still just staggering. I don't have current numbers for you, but I can tell you that there's not a day that goes by that I don't receive a complaint of a fraud out there, of somebody trying to steal information through a phishing scam. What we are seeing, however, in the phishing scams is the evolution of SMS solicitations. SMS solicitations we commonly refer to as a smishing expedition. Smishing has become more common. There was a news article last night that I found here in my local newspaper and on the television that discussed people receiving text messages in the area with a local area code. That particular area code says your bank account has been compromised. Please call this telephone number as quickly as possible. We'll talk a little bit more about how that scam works in a minute, but because it was using a local area code, it was having some success. Fortunately, people are becoming more aware of this, and the Attorney General's office has tried to get the word out to people that these are scams. So, and secondly, the scams that we'll talk about too are the phone calls through the voice over IP, or as you're well aware, we commonly refer to those as phishing expeditions. So somebody came up with phishing one day. Obviously, it's catchy, so we're going to try to tag that to everything we can. All right. I said a few minutes ago that people have tools that are created specifically to target voice over IP systems. I'm not going to go into detail on any of the specific tools, but I can tell you that we have commonly seen at least three. Primarily, the attacks that we're seeing are focusing with voice over IP in regards to SIP protocols. SIP protocols, as many of you are aware, are obviously a little bit more platform independent. The SIP protocol is used by several people, and it's well known, well documented. The SIP Vicious tool suite, which provides a scanner, an extension identifier, a weak password exploit tool, and obviously a reporting tool, is well known to attack SIP phones and SIP extensions. There is a penetration testing company, Canvas, with their Immunity product that provides a tool called VoIP Pack, which will also test it. Now, these tools can be used, obviously, for internal testing to verify the security of your own system, but it's not uncommon to see them fall into the hands of scammers and people execute them over the internet looking for a vulnerable system somewhere. And then the last tool is IAX Ping Poker. And IAX obviously was originally crafted specifically with the Asterisk systems, but I believe it's been adopted by others now, and the protocol has become more common. It's not immune to the exploits at this moment of looking for weak systems out there, so the IAX protocol is now also being explored more commonly. So let's talk for a minute about some specific attacks that we've seen. In the past several months, and by this I mean during calendar year 2009, we've seen two specific types of voice-over IP fraud. The voice-over IP fraud that we've seen, which is essentially a criminal act, is the compromise of the server to allow outbound telephone calls at the owner's expense. Now, this can be due to weak passwords on the SIP accounts. It can be due to poor security context in regards to who can make telephone calls. But regardless, if somebody finds an open door here and they enter to make the phone calls, their entire purpose is primarily to make telephone calls without charging themselves. We've seen these for calls coming into the United States. We've seen these for calls leaving the United States. We've seen a combination of such, but the number one goal there is obviously toll fraud. The second type of voice over IP scam that we've seen quite a bit of is the use of voice over IP systems to launch vishing scams. These particular vishing scams are going to be broken down into two subcategories just for a little bit more information. These particular vishing scams that I've seen most commonly involve either the compromise of the server to create inbound phone numbers for collection and forwarding, but this usually requires a collaboration with some sort of phishing email or, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, possibly a smishing text message that was sent out. The scam that I mentioned a minute ago with that smishing text message would be this type of fraud where somebody was asked to please telephone a phone number because of, in this case, their bank account was potentially compromised. Almost what happens here is somebody has compromised typically a voice over IP server, and they've actually crafted an extension. By using a voice over IP server within the local area or with the area code that they have designated to this local area, people are more likely to call when they receive it and say, hey, it's a local phone number. When that call, however, comes into the voice over IP PBX, as most of you well aware, that call can be forwarded via the internet to almost anywhere. It does not have to terminate locally. So getting someone to have a little confidence in the phone number is key here. Getting them to call is essential. That phone call solicitation can come through an email, or it can come through a SMS message, such as the one in this particular scam that was on the news here yesterday. So the compromise of the server to create inbound numbers for collection, that works. Now, similar to that is using the PBX to launch outbound vishing scams, but this one almost without exception requires the use of an automated attendant. Now, on the first scam, when somebody calls in, they can certainly be redirected to a live person if they need to, and that's not a problem. However, what happens with the outbound calls and the automated systems are usually calling you to alert you of a compromise of your bank account. One particular scam that we've seen here in Oklahoma involving a financial institution, a lot of customers in a particular area began receiving phone calls stating that it was their bank calling and that their account had been compromised. In order to verify that, please press 1 to transfer yourself to the security department. Obviously, once they pressed 1, they heard a ringing in the background and they were transferred. Not a live person answering the phone, but an automated attendant. The automated attendant said, thank you for contacting our security department. We have verified your account may be the victim of a compromise. Please enter your account number. People seem to trust automated systems more than they trust people. It's odd. But by initiating the number 1 to talk to the security department, the victim now feels empowered. They have now initiated an action instead of simply receiving it, even though the initial phone call or phishing message came to them. Now that they've committed an action in this process, they feel more empowered typically, and oftentimes will enter that account information onto the phone. After all, it's an automated system. It's not somebody with a foreign accent requesting it. Once they enter that information, typically they will then be asked for the expiration date and or the PIN number to that account for verification. And oftentimes they will be then told, yes, indeed, your account was compromised. Please cease using your cards for a few days. We will send you a new one in the mail in 3 to 5 days. Sometimes, however, they're told, it's okay, your account is absolutely fine. Don't worry about it. So depending on how the attacker crafts the social engineering aspect of the call, they can be led one way or the other. So the first calls, obviously, are outbound toll fraud. The second calls are typically trying to initiate an inbound call, and they use an automated attendant and people's apparent comfort level with automated attendants to try to solicit the information. Now, specifically in the attack I'm mentioning that happened in Oklahoma, they had not altered the caller ID, so people were very aware that when they got the phone call, and it was let's just say it was a unrelated industry from a far-off state that was phone calling, most people recognized it and felt uncomfortable and then immediately hung up and phoned their bank directly. The bank notified us, and we initiated an investigation immediately. And fortunately, in this case, I was able to actually call the company who had been victimized, speak to somebody who knew about the technology, and was actually able to start looking into the case while the fraud was still occurring. And while those phone calls were still attached via voice over IP, so we could begin getting getting IP addresses to start the investigation. So it was key there. Now, I mentioned a few reasons why people are successful in these attacks. These particular attacks are successful because people tend to put faith in their caller ID. They tend to trust automated systems more than they do humans. And unfortunately, the elder clients out there, when they get a phone call from the bank, say, well, they had my name and number. They had my bank information. At least they knew who I banked with. They must know something about me. So they tend to be very trusting. And unfortunately, that's what people are preying upon when they're trying to seek this information. So from the legal aspects here, when the FBI investigates these crimes, we have two specific statutes that we usually employ. The first statute is Title 18, United States Code, Section 1030, which relates to fraud and related computer connection frauds there. This particular statute focuses very specifically on financial interest computers, protected interest computers, healthcare information, passwords, and that type of stuff. This statute is very, very commonly used with intrusions. This would be if somebody actually, in old school terms, hacked into a server. This would be the statute that we would usually employ. However, with voice over IP fraud, we also employ the wire fraud aspect of it, which is also a much more simple element to prove that you're using an interstate commerce vehicle, a wire, in this case it would be the internet, to perpetuate a scheme to defraud. So that particular one is a little easier. If it involves a financial institution, the crime can serve up to 30 years. It can pull up to 30 years. Otherwise, it'll be up to 20 years imprisonment for the victim, or for the subject. So finally, how do we report this? We encourage you, obviously, call your local FBI office. We take calls directly. Several of my cases, especially involving voice over IP, have come directly from victim companies. We're not out to publicize this. We're not out to get anybody bad press. Reporting to law enforcement does not mean you've lost control of your system. It allows us, however, to get into the case and start investigating. Is this going to be a targeted attack? Is this going to be a simple fraud, a criminal aspect, or what? And also, if you don't wish to call the FBI or your local police department, you can also report it to ic3.gov. ic3.gov is a clearinghouse for internet-related crimes, and that will help provide an outlet to where we can get statistics and start helping get the word out even more. But regardless of whether you phone us or you report it online, the number one thing we need, if we can't catch the crime occurring, as I did in that last instance I mentioned, we need logs, logs, logs. Please look at logging your systems. Please look at how you can identify who's been using your security context and how we can identify these people, because more often than not, it's going to lead us down a long chain of computers, and trying to identify who's on the other side of that keyboard is the key. So as many logs as you can provide to the law enforcement authorities, the better. So finally, with that, I'm going to open it up to questions for a couple of minutes. My information will stay on the screen, and I'm here for you.
Michael, thank you very much. That was great. We're open for questions, so either type them in and we'll get them answered, or raise your hand and I will let you talk. just to let you know, the presentations will all be put up on the asterisk.org website within the next couple of days. So if anybody had questions about the specific list of items that were mentioned, the different intrusion detection tools and testing tools, we will get those put out there. Looks like Juan Garcia has a question. So let me make you... Looks like you're connected to audio. What do I have to do this? Let's see here. All right, we've got some questions coming in over the internet here. Look over the question online thing. So it says, can you still contact FBI if you're outside of the U.S., but the logs show the attack is coming from inside the U.S.?
Absolutely. Feel free to contact. If you've identified an IP address and you feel that the attack is coming from a specific geographic area, feel free to contact a local FBI office in that area. We have 56 field divisions around the country. There will be an office that handles everything. We do also, in I believe it's 50-plus countries around the world, have an FBI presence. And if you can identify them locally there, you can feel free to report yourself as a victim in that country.
Excellent. Another question, were the compromised systems that you've run across primarily directly connected to the internet, or were they behind a firewall?
The systems that I've encountered have always been directly connected to the internet. And when asking the companies why that would be, more often than not, what we found is they've employed remote workers that needed access, and they did not, in their instance, use a VPN to provide that access. So to answer the question, in the cases I've seen, they've been directly connected.
Okay. I've heard of cases where an attack system was confiscated by law enforcement. What can you say about that, and how could it affect us in this case?
Whoa, there are no absolutes in these investigations. I can tell you from personal experience, especially with a victim company, we try to work very, very hard to not bring your business down in any way. What we are looking for, as I indicated, are logs and some sort of forensic evidence of who committed the crime. If we can simply get an image of the server, or you can provide a mirrored drive, for instance, that would provide the same content as the actual live server, that will usually provide what we're looking for. If you're being cooperative in helping us, the FBI is not out to hurt the commercial businesses, and we're not out to hurt the victims. We're trying to get the evidence, and obviously if we can't get it, that's going to hamper the investigation. But from my personal experience, no, we don't typically confiscate from a victim. We will, however, if we feel that the perpetrator was part of that company. We are starting to look more at what we would call the middlemen nowadays. And if we feel that you're part of the crime, then we're going to treat you as such, in which case if you're not cooperative and we need to use any legal means necessary to obtain the evidence, we will.
Very good. Marco Muta says he's from Portugal and has logged a number of calls going from Miami through Portugal to Cuba due to a lack of security on one box. He doesn't ask a direct question, but I suppose one should say if you're noticing that kind of thing, this is exactly the sort of thing that you'd report. Would the best thing to be contact the Miami region or field office?
Absolutely. In that case, if you have evidence that the calls are originating based at a box in the Miami division area, absolutely, that would be one of our top priorities. And again, we'd have to look at the motives of the individual, but if we determine that it's a national security situation, that would become one of our top priorities, and we definitely get in it right away.
Excellent. I'm getting a fair number of questions, and I'm not sure we're going to have time to answer all of them because we've got several presentations to go, but I'll throw a couple more of them out. Let's see here. Mark Peterson asks, can you still contact FBI if you're outside of the U.S.? Okay, we've already answered that one. So Marco does inform him that we do collect the IP addresses from where calls come from and do some logging. So that'll definitely help in that situation.
Good to hear. Very good.
Does the FBI have a site that lists tools used and known in scamming activities?
Not specifically for voice over IP or other frauds. There's a lot of private industry folks out there, and I'll let some of the other presenters talk more about the tools that are used, but the FBI doesn't typically provide the list such as that. We don't want to give anybody any ideas either, you know.
Yeah. One more from this list, and then we're going to go on to Dan York. So let's see here. Is it typically Asterisk-based systems that you see compromised, or do you see other SIP servers and PBXs targeted?
I have seen more than just Asterisk out there, but I will say Asterisk is a leader in the voice over IP field from my experience. So it's not surprising to find a ready-made Trix box or something plugged in at a small to medium-sized company. Wow, well, right on cue.
Yeah. Well, Special Agent McAndrews, I thank you very much for taking the time to join us today. I'm going to collect the rest of the questions that have come in here, and I will probably be posting them. If you have time or inclination to be able to answer them, please do, and we will try and get that out to everybody as part of sort of an FAQ that we'll post along with this presentation when it goes up after the fact.
Fantastic. I want to thank everyone for attending today. It's definitely getting the word out there, and the folks that are using the systems, getting their help in securing them prevents more people from becoming victims. So if you do become a victim, we're here to help. I hope everyone, though, gets a lot from the seminar today, and I thank you for letting me attend.
You're very welcome.